Hi, welcome everybody. This is Rick Ferguson with Loyalty Summit and Loyalty Summit CXM coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. And we want to welcome all of you who are attending our latest live stream event. In this case, we're talking to Anthony Weiner, Chief Product Officer from Kognitiv. Welcome, Anthony, to our live stream podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Glad to be here.
And we are very happy to have Anthony joining us this close to the holidays. And what you're about to see is a kind of a recap of a presentation he gave to a packed house at Loyalty Summit CXM in Los Angeles about a month ago at the beautiful Beverly Hilton. It was very, very well received presentation. Certainly one of the best presentations I've seen from a sponsor in a conference setting. And we're very excited that Anthony's going to share some of those insights with you all today. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, and I think we're going to try to have you share your screen, Anthony. So let's give that a shot.
Okay, let's see here. All right, can you see my screen?
I believe we can now. I see your title slide, and I'm sure that means our viewers can see it as well. So let me know if you have any trouble advancing the slides, but otherwise, let's just take it away.
All right, I think we're in business here. So thanks for the time. Thanks for the time, Rick. As you mentioned, we're repurposing some of the content that we presented at the Loyalty Summit conference in LA a few weeks back. So we're taking some of the key nuggets from that presentation, kind of weaved it into this story, which we'll have follow with a Q&A. But really, our focus is outcome-based marketing. What does that mean? What does customer engagement in the age of AI look like? So we want to set the stage before we get to that concept, and then talk about the opportunities, the implications, and some of the challenges that are associated with that. And so to get us rolling here, starting with a quote from a historical figure who said, "There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen." And it feels like we're in one of those generational moments right now with artificial intelligence. You can't turn on the TV without hearing about AI. You can't get your mail without opening a magazine that has AI on the cover. You can't look at your email without getting something about AI. AI is, the messaging around AI is all around us. It's the zeitgeist today. And started obviously with science publications, tech publications, eventually working its way into business publications. When it gets to the cover of Cosmopolitan and Glamour, among others, that is probably something that we should be talking about. And it kind of feels like it's just come out of nowhere, right? AI was kind of being talked about, but it didn't really become mainstream until the end of last year. And we'll talk about what happened at the end of last year, but it kind of just popped at the end of last year. And it's been all everyone's been talking about for the last 12 to 18 months. But really, this is a moment that's 70 years in the making. Artificial intelligence, sorry, let me close my screen here. Artificial intelligence really dates back to the 1950s. Neural networks, the concept of a neural network dates back to the 1950s. I think it was Dartmouth when they built the perceptron. It was a computer as big as a living room. We've heard all of those stories. And since then, there's been a slow and steady evolution of the technology that has turned into artificial intelligence and machine learning. So neural networks were created in the 1950s. We had the dawn of the bots in the 1960s, where we had robots working alongside humans in GM plants in the Midwest. In the 70s, we had breakthroughs with visual recognition. In the 80s, we had breakthroughs with speech recognition. So a lot of what we think of as AI today really is 30, 40, 50 years old. And a lot of the things that are happening under the hood. So another thing that happened in the 80s was, I think the invention or the discovery of backpropagation, which is a technique to help train neural networks. It was still very much an academic exercise. It wasn't a ton of business application through the 80s, but then that started to change in the 90s with intelligent robotics. So obviously more business applications there from a consumer lens. That's when Sony came out with their Aibo dog, and people started to hear more about it, which then led into more innovation in the 2000s with deep learning and Gary Kasparov, losing to artificial intelligence, chess grandmaster, virtual assistants in the 2010s with Alexa and Siri, and now we're in the 2020s with generative AI. So the evolution of artificial intelligence up to this point, where we're all not paying attention to it, really has been built on decades and decades of research and innovation and technological breakthrough. And the advancement really is the result of parallel advances in a few different areas. And what we see is that the quantum leaps in artificial intelligence really are but they are a result of increases in processing speeds. So for those that are familiar with Moore's laws, that dictates that the number of microprocessors you can fit in a circuit board, the number of transistors you can fit in a circuit board doubles every 18 months. That has been proven true. Processing speeds jump 10x every decade. Storage costs drop 90% every decade. So what we're seeing is that computers are getting more powerful in their ability to compute. The cost to store data, which is a critical input into machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms, is dropping significantly every decade. And so what we have are these algorithms that are becoming more powerful, not necessarily because the underlying math is changing, but because they're being trained on more data, and the processing that we can throw at that data is increasing. So machines are trained on more data, moving from 10 to over a trillion parameters, and they're getting smarter and smarter as a result of this. So GPT-4, which is the latest version from OpenAI, is more than 2.5 times smarter than GPT 3.5. It's the same type of model. It's still an LLM, a large language model, same type of model from the same company. The only difference is that GPT-4 has more parameters. It's trained on more data than GPT 3.5. And so the evolution of artificial intelligence really is going alongside this increase in processing speed and this drop in storage costs that's giving us this very powerful technology today. And what we see is that AI now essentially is at the core of some of the most quickly adopted consumer tech over the last several years. In this chart, where we look at the time to reach 100 million users, almost every single one of these applications has some kind of reliance on artificial intelligence. Google Translate, Uber, I think that's Telegram, Spotify, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, all of those socials. But then lastly, ChatGPT. It took ChatGPT 2 months to get to 100 million users, built on the technology that we just went through. And so it's really taking over in a lot of different areas on both the consumer side as well as the business side. When you think of process automation, when you think of business reorganization, simplification of certain activities, it's also making a dent there. And so in the context of loyalty, it begs the question, what does this mean for loyalty? AI is everywhere. AI is taking over. AI can do everything. That must be transformational for loyalty. When we think about building affinity, preference, premium in a customer's relationship with a brand, this must be transformational. What we found, though, is that surprisingly, AI hasn't had much of an impact on brand loyalty just yet. In the 2023 Kognitiv Global Loyalty Research Study that we ran, we identified that consistent behavior by vertical is actually rather low. So whether we're looking at retail or restaurant, quick serve restaurant, only 31% of consumers exhibit consistent purchase behavior. If we look at hospitality, whether it's business travel or leisure travel, that is even lower at between 17 and 21%. And if we're looking at financial services, banking, investments, so on and so forth, it's roughly 34% of customers that represent consistent purchase behavior. And so we have all of this great evolution, all this great technology. We have artificial intelligence, we have marketing technology, we have advertising technology, we have all these great tools that are coming in to try and help build loyalty, but customers are still very fickle. In a lot of verticals, we've identified that even over the course of a 30-day period, 50% of a brand's customers relationship with a brand will change, perhaps positively, perhaps negatively. And so AI really hasn't quite cracked the nut on understanding customer behavior and driving loyalty. And simplistically, the reason why is that despite all the hype, AI is still not that smart. This is a snapshot from an article by Jan LeCun, who is the chief data scientist, chief AI scientist over at Meta. And in his article, he's basically saying, despite everything that we're seeing with ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion and all of these other tools, AI really isn't that smart. AI can't tie shoes. You can teach a 5-year-old how to tie shoes. AI can't tie shoes. If you spend 10 hours with a 15-year-old, you can teach a 15-year-old how to drive a car. AI still hasn't figured out how to drive a car, despite billions of dollars being thrown into all sorts of different technologies to try and figure it out. And so artificial intelligence is still very much in the world of narrow artificial intelligence. You can throw algorithms and data and processing power and storage at solving specific types of problems where artificial intelligence does really well. But it struggles in broader contexts. And that's why we think, AI fundamentally just isn't built to solve for customer behavior, because customer behavior it's not one dimensional. When we think of customer behavior, there are a lot of different variables that influence how a customer behaves, whether they choose to interact with a brand or not, what they choose to buy, what price they're willing to pay, so on and so forth. And on one side, you have a series of customer variables: deal sensitivity, preferences, product propensities, missions, associations, all the way laddering up to social networks and family networks, as well as lifestyles, life stages, so on and so forth. You have all of these different variables, all these different data points that inform how a customer might behave. And that's only one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, we then have the brand and what the brand has to offer and what the brand is communicating, everything from a channel or retail experience through to the content strategy, one-to-one communications, laddering up to the product assortment, the pricing architecture, the material sourcing, fundamentally all laddering then up to the brand strategy, the brand promise and the marketing strategy. So on the consumer side, you've got all of these different variables that influence behavior. On the brand side, you have all of these different variables that will also influence customer behavior when they come together. And then lastly, you have this third factor of the fact that the business is trying to drive their business. A brand is trying to drive their business. They have short-term goals and long-term goals that they're trying to accomplish, which influences the types of actions that they're trying to take. AI is not built to solve for this, which is why we see persistently, that customer behavior is still fickle. There are no signs that customer loyalty is increasing from year to year on a broad basis across any vertical that we look at, which in some senses is a little disheartening, but it's also encouraging for those that are trying to solve it. And when we think about it from our perspective, marketing hasn't changed a lot in 20 years. In some ways, it's changed a lot in the sense that we have new channels, we have new formats, we have new technologies that allow us to engage customers. But if we think about it from a broad campaign planning, execution, testing, and measurement perspective, marketing hasn't really changed that much. We have a lot of steps in the process, from campaign planning all the way through to execution and attribution. We have a lot of steps in the process. We have a lot of people working on the different steps in the process, a lot of teams, some of them internal, some of them external. There's a lot of handing over back and forth. There's a lot of time and money that's spent in this process, which is one of the reasons why, while marketing has changed in a lot of ways, marketing also hasn't really changed in a lot of ways. A lot of the promise that we got from technology in terms of creating more personalized experiences hasn't really delivered. And so we asked ourselves, where can an AI native approach help? And the easy answer, the obvious answer, not very helpful answer, is AI can help anywhere where a decision is made. Because if AI can tap into data, if AI can look at historical results to inform future executions, that's typically the type of fertile ground where artificial intelligence and machine learning can help humans make better decisions. And so one way to approach this is to look at every step in the process and think, how can I improve this particular step? And then how can I improve this next step? And go from that perspective. But that's an inside out view. It's applying artificial intelligence or an AI native approach to an existing construct. And the question that we are asking ourselves is, if we didn't have this, but we had AI native technology, what would this process look like? And what we identified, what we're building, what we're taking to market, is a very simple 4-step process that is all tied into this idea of outcomes-based planning and execution. So instead of having access to a bunch of great software that provides a marketer with access to all of the data that they could ever want access to, and all of the control over which audience they're engaging, what content they're engaging them with, what channel they're going to engage them on, and when they're going to message them, which is the input-based view of the world, an AI native approach will flip it on its head. All of those controls and access that are provided to marketers today is really all to give that marketer control to deliver an experience that they think will result in the type of customer behavior that they're looking for to achieve a specific business goal. With an outcome-based planning and execution approach, you flip it on its head. You simply ask the marketer, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to drive revenue? Are you trying to drive volume? Are you trying to drive conversion? Are you trying to drive margin? Are you trying to drive some combination of those, along with any other behaviors? And with that definition, then leaving the artificial intelligence, the AI native technology, to define the parameters for the user, who to engage, what content to engage them with, to select the right content for those users or for those customers, and to then tee it all up for execution. And so it's a very different approach, moving from an input-based planning and execution world to an outcome-based AI native planning and execution world. But we think there's a lot of opportunity there for brands to deliver more relevant experiences that result in incremental behavior for the brands. Assuming we move to this world, then the next question is, where does this leave the marketer? A lot of marketing today is really focused on planning, execution, attribution. If we just press a magic button and automate all of this, what does the marketer do? Is the marketer out of a job? And our firm belief is that the answer is no. Kareem Lakhani at Harvard Business School said, AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI. And we believe that fundamentally. There are certain tasks that are better fitted for humans. There are certain tasks that are better fitted for machines. And then there are a number of tasks where humans and machines can complement each other. And there's a great framework from the book Human Plus Machine by Paul Doherty and Jim Wilson. They're Accenture guys. They wrote this book a few years ago, and there's some really helpful frameworks in thinking about how and where to deploy AI within an organization. But in this framework, they've essentially identified a number of different types of activities where humans should lead versus where machines should lead, as well as where they complement each other. And if we look at a lot of marketing planning, execution, and attribution today, a lot of that activity really falls on the right-hand side of the screen here when we're talking about amplifying insight, when we're talking about transacting in terms of delivery, when we're talking about iterating on customer experiences, predicting customer behavior, adapting to changes in the marketplace, so on and so forth. And so there's a lot that the machine should take on. But what that does is it frees up the human to then work on more strategic initiatives to build brand loyalty and create brand value. Things such as product assortment, things such as retail strategy, it's product, place, price, promotion. They're very big decisions that marketers should focus on that really can transform a brand much more than just the execution of an individual campaign. How many brands have entirely pivoted their business because they've decided on a specific retail strategy versus another, or they focused on a particular product innovation versus another? That has nothing to do with campaigning. That has to do with thinking about the higher level items that will separate a brand from the rest of the pack, driving that preference, that affinity, and the willingness to pay that premium. And so we're very focused on this concept of human-led, machine optimized. We really do believe that the human is going to provide the direction and the constraints and the objectives. And within that, the machine will then figure out what's the best way to get there. And what we also like to focus on is this concept of empathizing. Machines aren't going to be able to empathize anytime soon, but being able to bring the human aspect into the strategy, into the decision making, is going to be another key contribution from the human side of the equation. The result of intelligent collaboration, as Paul and Jim cover in their book, is this concept of a value multiplier. So depending on how focused an organization is in redesigning jobs around humans and machines, brands will drastically increase the value that they can drive within their organization with their investment in people capital. And we've seen this working with a lot of our clients. Smaller teams can have outsized impact because they're using technology in the right way. The humans are focused on the things that the humans can do best, and they trust the machines to do what the machines are uniquely skilled to do. And from a marketing perspective, if we circle back, what that means from a planning and execution and a measurement perspective is it means that marketers can now be on time, on budget, and on target, regardless of the outcome that they're trying to achieve, regardless of the behaviors that they're trying to drive associated with those outcomes, with every single campaign and or with always on execution for customer engagement. Marketers can trust with an AI native approach that they can be on time, on budget, and on target. And the result of that, or the ultimate result, is building deeper, more meaningful relationships with every single customer that a brand has, regardless of their life cycle stage. Whether it's in an early stage of acquisition where a customer is just getting to know a brand, whether it's with onboarding and creating a relevant and valuable experience, whether it's with existing customers who are just trying to be as relevant and valuable as possible, or for customers that may have lapsed and they have different life cycle stages or different focuses in their life that maybe make the brand a different fit than what it was before. Being able to engage every single customer to build those deeper, more meaningful relationships, we do believe is the power of AI native technology. So Rick, I think we're past my time here. So let me wrap up there, and I think we can move over to the Q&A. Rick, I think you're on mute.
There I am. I had to go on mute so I didn't disturb your presentation, but I think we are in good shape, and we still have some time for some Q&A. And I think I'll start off, and some of the questions I had lined up, I think you did a good job of answering. But one of the things that I kind of hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of hear this between the lines of your presentation, is it sounds to me like you're overall an optimist about the power of AI and its ability to do some of the things that we've been trying to do, to your point, for 20 years without a lot of success. But then you do hear some of the criticisms and watchouts of AI marketing technology. There's the idea of hallucinations, right? And even though you've trained the model on all this data, that it's still going to sometimes give you information that's wildly inaccurate, right? And I wonder what you say to marketers that are wondering, can I trust this type of tool when I know, just playing around with ChatGPT, that sometimes it's going to give me some information that's wildly inaccurate?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that we think about a lot. When I put myself in a marketer's shoes, typically the types of marketers that we're talking to, they represent brands that generate hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars in revenue every single year, right? The equity valuation associated with those brands is, multiple times that in the billions of dollars. They're stewards of a brand that in many cases has been built over multiple decades, and it doesn't really matter what the upside is. If you can't trust that tool to be your partner, you're not going to risk eroding that kind of value. And so I think trust is going to be, one of the defining topics of artificial intelligence. I mean, you see it increasingly discussed over the last several months. And I think what marketers are going to need to see as a starting point is AI is going to have to earn the right to work for them. It's going to have to earn the right to personalize campaigns, to engage customers without their oversight. And we've focused on that in a few different ways within our technology. One is in just the underlying construct of the artificial intelligence and machine learning layer. So there are generally two approaches that developers can take. One is a neural network approach. So if you take ChatGPT, that's essentially a type of neural network. They're very powerful, but they're difficult to explain, and they're not that stable. An alternative approach is an AI agent approach, where you're taking a number of different types of algorithms and combining them together to get to a particular outcome. That's the approach that we've taken with our technology because it has more stability and because it has more explainability. Being able to pop up the hood and help a marketer understand why the AI is working in a certain way, why it's recommending engaging a customer in a certain way rather than another, I think is going to be really important in building that trust. Having the ability, the visibility and the explainability of what's going on. And then the second piece that I would also mention, I think is worth mentioning in the context of earning the right, is you have to have the built-in experimentation. You can't just go in and say, okay, you did it your way. Now let's all pivot and do it 100% this new way. You really need to have, the concept of an A/B test where you're running one side by side with another to understand how is audience delivery changing? How is content delivery changing? How is customer response changing in terms of incrementality? Are we driving more trips? Or are we driving more a bigger basket when a customer is coming in? So experimentation is another piece that we've built into our technology. But yeah, explainability is really important. And then, lastly, to the point of experimentation, control. Some parts of the process, the marketer might feel more comfortable handing over to the AI than others. And so we need to have the flexibility to provide the marketer with that ability as they're building up that muscle, as they're adopting those new ways of working, to say, I'm still going to do this myself with my team, but I'm going to trust the AI to do this. So I think between the explainability and the control and the visibility, that's how you start to build trust. But it's not something that's going to happen over a series of months. It's going to take several years. It's going to take a lot of change.
I'm sure it will. And I think if I remember correctly from your presentation in LA, one of the key differentiators from your AI-based solutions that are going to deliver on this promise of outcome-based marketing is that you didn't leave the design entirely to the engineers and the mathematicians, right? You actually brought in consumer behavioral experts to try to help train these models to deliver on the promise of one-to-one personalization at scale.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously on our team, we have statisticians, data scientists, machine learning operations engineers, data engineers, all the roles that you would typically expect to have. But we also have psychologists on the team. And when we built the cognition artificial intelligence layer, we really wanted to bring in certain concepts from psychology, theory of mind concepts, to try and address that portion of the equation that is customer, what influences customer behavior. So not the brand side, but the customer side. How do propensities come to be? What is the influence of networks? What role does simply geographic distance relative to a store or income relative to a price point play in how a customer perceives value and relevance? And in this session, we certainly didn't get into the weeds on the agent that we've built, but you can see that we've broken out discrete pieces in the equivalent of human processing to try and get there. And the way that surfaces in the technology is going back to the idea of outcome-based marketing. When we ask the marketer, what are you trying to achieve? Revenue, volume, margin, conversion. We also have this context of behavioral goals sitting underneath it. Are you trying to build your relationship with customer by cross-selling or upselling? Are you trying to get them to repeat a particular behavior? Are you trying to get them to trial a new type of behavior? Where can you nudge a customer from their existing behavior into a new engagement with you that will be both valuable to them and incremental to the business? So that trying to bring psychology and break it down mathematically, I think is going to be the difference between AI that works and AI that doesn't. It doesn't all work, right? You can't just throw a general model at it and say, oh, this is transformative, because it's not.
Right. And that sounds like it, to me, at least, it will be a key differentiator. And I know as we wrap up, I know you had likened what we're experiencing right now with the advent of AI and the excitement that it's generated over the last 12 months or so. You had likened it certainly to some of the other big tech revolutions in the past, to the smartphone, 15, 16 years ago, the internet revolution of the 1990s. So it seems like an exciting time to be a marketer and have all these tools at your disposal. What about this time as a marketer and as a product designer gets you the most excited about, getting up and going to work every day and delivering on these promises?
There's a statistic that gets measured, different ways every single year. I've seen it for at least 15 years running, and it's, some version of 80% of companies invest in personalization, but only 20% of customers feel like they're getting relevant messages from the brand.
Right.
That's been going on for at least 15 years, right? And it's so frustrating. I mean, I'm a consumer, you're a consumer. I'm sure every day you get exposed to hundreds of ads where you're like, what the hell is this person thinking putting this ad in front of me? Right. And I get motivated every day to try and solve that problem, right? I want to put relevant messaging. I want to get brands relevant messaging in front of customers that are going to find it valuable, and create that kind of win-win relationship between a customer and a brand. And if we do that, not only do customers obviously have better media experiences, but they also develop stronger relationships with brands, and marketers in turn can then focus on things that really bring them, joy and enjoyment, and help them drive value for the brands that they represent. You talk to marketers, they'll tell you that 50% of their job is just IOs and POs, right? They're just pushing paper to try and, run campaigns and move things along. And that's, the marketing equivalent of, what data scientists do, where they say 50% of their job is just cleaning data. It's a necessary part of the job, but it's not a part of the job that anyone really wants to do. If we can take care of that and free them up to do the things that truly build, brand value, what might they create? And so that's what we're trying to do with an AI native approach to campaign planning and execution.
Well, it sounds great. Sounds very exciting. And I know we could talk a lot more about this, but we want to make sure we give our folks a good dose of what you guys have to say and leave them wanting more. So if you, as a viewer, do have any other questions for Anthony about Kognitiv's AI-driven approach to outcome-based marketing, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to forward the message along. You can please reach out to Kognitiv directly, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions. And we're looking forward to more from you guys. We love having you on our live stream events, and we hope we get to talk to you again soon.
Happy to join you anytime. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. And goodbye, everybody. We'll see you all again soon.